Hi there. So I've said since Friday that something felt wrong. Something about the way the news was coming out to us about the king, about Harry, about Santa Bali, about Meghan and Gwyneth Paltrow. None of it was making sense in my head. And I think something finally clicked. And Peggy Lee, over on the Royal Grifts channel, I had left a comment in the Royal Grifts on her last video. Please go watch it. It's really good. And when I left a comment, someone replied to it, and I think everything clicked. The thing is, and if you are a monarchist and you can't imagine that the king has any role in anything that, Harry is up to, I want you to really watch this video with an open mind. I'm not saying the king is corrupt. I'm not saying the king is involved in what Harry is doing in Santa Bali. I'm not saying that the king bullied this beautiful woman. None of that. I'm saying that the king's illness is not a coincidence right now. And what they're doing is they're buying time for the king to figure out how he wants to deal with Harry. And if you can't have just that little bit of an open mind to this, you probably don't want to watch this video. Now, I don't have any connection to the palace. I'm in suburban New Jersey. Trust me. They don't know I exist. So I don't have any inside information. I am going off of what I am seeing. And this is all my speculation. This is my theory. Do your own research and form your own conclusions. But let's get into this. And I'm going to take you back and go through a couple things first. So on Friday evening, I was making a video, and the video I was making was starting to look into the stuff about Santa Bali. And then I heard some stuff from Lady C. I heard her opinion on the whole Santa Bali situation, which I actually agreed with at the time. And I kind of, changed my opinion and started the video over. And then I heard some news about the king. And it changed my perspective again. And so I kind of stopped and I said, okay, I can't keep doing this. I'll be up all night. And so instead I said, I'm just going to sit back and watch, and I'm going to listen and hear what exactly is going on with Santa Bali, with the king, with Megsy and Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean, it seemed like there was so much going on. And the biggest key to me was that why were we getting these press releases on a Thursday afternoon or a Friday afternoon? And I understand I didn't get them until Thursday and Friday night. But in the UK, this would have been late afternoon, Thursday and Friday. And that speaks volumes. And I know people don't really understand it very well these days. And I've actually done a video discussing this stuff when Harry was on his way to the UK for the Invictus game, the thing that was at St. Paul's Cathedral, and he got booed outside, blah, blah, blah. And the king, right before Harry announced that he was going to the UK, Friday night, the king let out a press release about his health. And I said it then. It is a well-known PR politics strategy. And it's hard for us to imagine in a 24-hour news cycle world. It's hard for us to imagine the people that still follow the practices of a 5-day news cycle. And what it is that's what the palace does, very much so still today. They follow those old guidelines. The idea that if you want everybody in the country to hear what you're saying, you say it Monday morning, 9 a.m. If you want people to forget about it by Monday morning, you say it Friday night. And the only times that there are exceptions to that is if you're releasing it on Friday night because you want to beat what someone else is going to say on Monday morning. And so you have to get your story out first. And so I want you to remember those two kind of overriding principles, because we've seen the palace do it before. I've seen the palace do it before. They do it a lot. They still use a lot of their strategies based on a 5-day news cycle rather than a 24-hour news cycle. And that's something that most people would say, hey, the palace, it takes them longer to change things. And I think that's very much so the case, that they still do things on that news cycle. And when they don't really want you to pay too close attention, when they want you to look over there and not over here, they're going to announce what's happening over here on a Friday night. If they want you to then turn around and look at something else on Monday morning, that's when they're going to announce it. So that's just a general idea that I firmly believe that the palace goes by. And so when I look at the things that I'm going to say in this video, that's my general perception. That's my perspective. First off, this is nonsense. This is two things. This is, one, Meghan being so self-absorbed and so unable to care what anyone else is thinking or doing, or what more important, bigger issues may be going on, that she's just going to go do her thing, and she could care less about, what's happening to Harry, about how the king is doing. She's just going to go out there and do her thing. And I think at this point, the palace has kind of decided, well, if we can't beat her, let's join her. In other words, not that they're joining with Meghan, but she's so predictable in her self-absorption that they have started to use it to their advantage, right? And we've seen that before. I did a video I think like 2 months ago, about where Catherine was able to predict exactly what Meghan was going to do. And so Catherine was able to come up with like a response before Meghan even did it, because it was so predictable what Meghan was going to do. I forget what the video is called, like Well Played Princess or something like that. But the palace has learned to use Meghan's horrible behavior to their advantage, which they should. Good. They should. It's about, fair, all's fair, right? If she's going to be a pain in the ass, they may as well benefit from it as often as they can. And so they probably could have predicted Meghan was going to go do something, because she had to, clap back about the whole Gwyneth Paltrow thing. And who knows? Maybe, I don't know. But they figured she was going to go out there and do something. Let her go do her distractions, because that'll keep the people who are just in it for the gossip, that'll keep them busy. And it succeeded, right? Of course, we had Harry out there with Sentabali, and at least, a good portion of the people who are aware of what Meghan and Harry are doing, they're out there worried about Meghan on Gwyneth Paltrow, right? We all know that. And that's fine. And all power to them. If that's what interests them, then why shouldn't they be? Of course. But that's what she's there for, and that's the element that she distracts. She keeps people busy, worried about whether or not, her feet are on the chair. And equally predictable, and some might even say malleable, you have Lady C going out there when the Sentabali stuff starts to come up, and right away she is out there in full force. I believe Wednesday or Thursday, I'm not exactly sure what day it was, because sometimes it might be, Thursday morning in the UK, but I watch it late at night on Wednesday evening. So she came out and she was on Dan Wooten, and she right away, and I actually agreed with her a great deal, she said it is Meghan's fault that all of this stuff is happening in Sentabali. She said, listen, you have a wonderfully intelligent woman, Dr. Sophie, coming into, Sentabali. Then they go to this polo tournament, and Meghan humiliated her in front of the world. Now, I didn't really see it as Dr. Sophie getting humiliated, but I felt Meghan was demeaning, and so I could understand how someone might feel insulted by it. But Lady C was very quick on, I believe it was Wednesday, it might have been Thursday, to come out and say, this entire situation in Sentabali, it's all Meghan's fault. And how many people heard that and said, yep, there we go. And I even agreed with it. I said, that sounds really reasonable. Here, Meghan insulted her, and Lady C was saying, for the culture that Sophie is from, this insult, it would be dealt with in the moment. No one was going to show any outside reaction to it. but she was going to go home, she was going to stew, and she was going to plot her revenge. And everything she says now about Sentabali is in revenge against Meghan. If Meghan hadn't pushed Dr. Sophie out of the way, we never would have heard this about Sentabali. And you know, I agreed. I thought there was a lot to that at the time. That was actually what I was originally doing the video about, saying, look at this, I agree with Lady C. And then I heard some more, because then Lady C was on Dan Wooten again. And then Jenny Bond came out. And we had this, you know, first on Thursday, the king went to the hospital, but then he's back home. And then Friday, we hear this again, late in the news cycle on Friday, which means one of two things. Either they had to beat something that was coming out, or they wanted to bury it. Now, why would they want to bury news about the king's health? He's the king, okay? You don't want to bury news about his health. So the only other option is they had to beat something. So, with that in mind, I want you to listen to what Lady C said on Dan Wooten Friday night. And I even left the date on here so that you can see this is coming from Dan Wooten Friday night.
Breaking right now, King Charles has appeared in public for the first time since an emergency hospital dash yesterday, which saw him have to cancel engagements.
Now, I want you to watch this little bit where Dan gives his little intro. I have never seen Dan do this before. Granted, I watch him a lot, but not a whole lot. But you tell me why it is that his right eye keeps twitching. Because he does it, it happens multiple times throughout this whole little thing. So, I don't know, maybe dust in his contacts, or something odd's going on here. Because I've never seen him do this.
Palace said this was a result of complications from his ongoing cancer treatment. However, he is now going away for rest and recuperation this weekend.
Again, I want you to listen to a couple things here. Number one, ongoing cancer treatment. Now, Lady C's about to come on, and she's going to say his cancer is incurable. But isn't all cancer considered incurable? The best you can hope for is to go into remission. And sadly, really sadly, I think I heard those exact words. Not that I learned it from Lady C. I knew this beforehand. But Lady C said those exact same words when the Sussex Squad was complaining about Catherine's video, the beautiful video that she did when she was, you know, kind of saying, hey, I'm back kind of thing, which was wonderful. And I don't want to put any shade to that. What Catherine did was fantastic. But Lady C was out there saying, how can you all say this? Cancer is never curable. It's in remission. It's always going to be in remission. You are, for the first 5 years, always under treatment. Okay, so now, with that in mind, keep track of what Dan and Lady C are about to say. They're about to say, his cancer is incurable. Yeah, we know. It's cancer. Number two, he's still in treatment. Well, of course. Because until you're in remission, you're in treatment. They're about to say he goes off for the weekend. So, hey, he waved and said hi to everybody on Friday, but don't expect to hear from him again for the rest of the weekend. And then, well, we'll see what Lady C says then.
Of course, the goal is to get him on the state visit to Italy in just 2 weeks' time. It has been easy to forget that the king is battling very, very severe cancer and is having ongoing treatment and has done ever since the announcement. But Lady Colin Campbell has some disturbing, if important, news about his condition. We'll get analysis from Connor Tomlinson in just one moment, but first, here's what Lady C had to say.
The king is not in any position health-wise to add to any stress and burdens that he already has. I mean, his cancer is not curable, or certainly, let me rephrase that, for public consumption. It is not yet cured, and there is no great prognosis that it will ever be cured. So he is having to live with treatment. And one of the things with cancer is you are not supposed to have any excessive stress.
So let's review. We have Dan Wooten's eye twitching all over the frickin' place. We have Lady C saying the king's cancer is incurable. He's still in treatment. He's away for the weekend. And he cannot be stressed. So anybody who wants to ask him any questions about anything you hear this weekend, don't expect to hear it, because the king has gone away for the weekend to recuperate. And by the way, when he comes back, don't stress him out. No difficult questions for the king. I mean, I'm sorry, but that raises a gazillion alarm bells. And that's the thing that I just couldn't put my finger on while I was looking at everything and listening to everything. Like, what's the big, why are they stressing this? What, stressing, no pun intended. Why are they emphasizing that the king cannot be stressed? I mean, of course he's sick. We all know that. We've known that for anybody who has ever known anybody who's ill. You know you don't want to stress them out. But Lady C is making this announcement on a Friday night and emphasizing that he can't be stressed. And then you have Jenny Bond come out and say, well, you know, William, he's going to be preparing to be king. Well, William's been preparing to be king since the day he was born. I mean, let's be honest. The guy has spent his whole life preparing for the eventual. No one's lying at this point. Okay? That's what I'm trying to get across. They are all being very careful with their words, and they are saying things that they're not wrong, they're not lying, but they are giving us an impression that the king situation is dire. I mean, I believe Jenny Bond. Well, let me see. I think I have that too. Hold on.
How do you feel for William? I mean, everyone gets worried about their dad when they're ill. You know, he's had, as he says, a brutal year with not only his father's illness, but obviously Catherine's illness as well. And well, everyone might get worried about their dad. With William, what the inevitable death of his father is going to completely change William's life. It's going to upend it. So that's a whole different ball game. So I'm sure he must be more concerned for himself and for his father than perhaps everyone else. But yeah, I suppose we should be somewhat reassured that William didn't come racing to his father's bedside.
Oh, yeah. William knows that one day he'll be king. William is preparing to be king. When he becomes king, it's going to be a whole new change. It's going to change his life completely. Well, yeah, none of this is untrue. It's all perfectly true. But the way she's saying it and the timing that she's using and the phrasing and the pulling at the heartstrings, it's intended to misdirect and make us think that something is going to happen imminently. And we'd best be careful because the king, you know, we just don't know. All right, so best not to stress him out. I see it perfectly clear. I hope that I'm conveying it properly. And all of this seems to me, let's get the king out of contact so that he doesn't have to answer any questions, no matter what may happen this weekend. Because they knew on Tuesday, Harry said he was stepping down from Bali. On Wednesday, Dr. Sophie, I'd like to say I took a page from her book with my theme music. She said, I'm not going to go quietly. I'm going to speak out about what I have seen. And it was at that point that the palace knew, oh shit, this isn't going to go away. And by Thursday, the king's in the hospital. By Friday, the king is so dire and his illness is so touch and go. We just don't know. But, you know, let's just keep the king from being stressed so that he can go to Italy in 2 weeks. I mean, do you see what I'm seeing? Sophie made it clear she's not going away. And undoubtedly, by this time, the palace knew she was going to be on morning shows on Sunday morning. And who did they make sure interviewed her? Someone who was firmly in Meghan's camp. And you could tell that by the interview. He was basically saying, well, you don't mean to be blaming the Duchess, do you? He didn't say that. He switched it at the last minute to say the Duke. But he was someone who was clearly in Harry and Meghan's camp. And if you watched the interview with Dr. Sophie, and it was her, another gentleman from Sentebale, and then the interviewer that was firmly in Meghan and Harry's camp, if you watch that interview, I want you to watch it a second time and catch the splices. They spliced things in that interview. And I don't know if Sophie asked to restate something or if they eliminated things that she was saying. But watch it very carefully and you will see the splices. And I can thank Megyn Kelly for that. Megyn Kelly taught me that when I was watching With Love Meghan, when she was pointing out the splices in With Love Meghan. Well, she taught me something because when I was watching the interview with Dr. Sophie, I caught the splices. And they're very good and they're very hard to catch. But if you watch it carefully, you'll see them. Now, this was the comment that I left on Grifty's video. And you can see Peggy Lee's brilliant comment. And that's all it was, one sentence. And it clicked it all into place. Because what I said was, why are we still tiptoeing around the fact that Charles knew this was happening? And that's why Charles is conveniently too ill to be stressed. Because he did know this was happening. And that is the next question that needs to be asked. Because Charles can no longer sit back and say he didn't know any of this. If you listen to what Dr. Sophie says, this has been going on for a while. This charity was originally started when Harry was definitely too young to be taking the reins of a charity, to be a trustee, a board, whatever the heck it is. But when Harry first took over Sentebale or first founded Sentebale, whatever you want to call it, I don't really think he had much to do with it until recently. But these things were going on then because it was people from then that have been sitting on this board for 20 years. Harry's 40. When he was 20, he was not put in charge of this huge charity. So who was? Someone was, and someone has been mismanaging it since then. And that's what Sophie is coming out and telling everybody. If you listen to Sophie talk about the experience, she really actually defends Meghan. She says, listen, I've got nothing against the Duchess. I knew if I came out and said anything, they would hurt her more, they would troll her more, because they would say she made me do it. So the best thing to do was just to keep my mouth shut for her sake. This was not about Meghan pushing Sophie out of the way. That was just a stupid, petty thing that I'm sure, after having listened to Dr. Sophie, I doubt Sophie would care. It didn't register with her. She's far too confident and far too capable to care whether or not Meghan wants her to stand next to her. I really don't think she noticed it in the way we did. She noticed it because of the media backlash, not because she cared. But again, why was Lady C putting it out there on Thursday that, Sentebale, don't look over here. Nope, this is Megsy's fault. Let's just blame Megsy. Wash our hands of it. You don't have to worry about this anymore. Oh, and by the way, the king's really sick. Don't stress him out. I mean, that was the piece that needed to click into place. Why were they hiding his condition? They weren't hiding his condition. They were releasing it on a Friday night because they had to beat whatever Sophie was going to say on Sunday morning. Remember, I said there's two reasons you release information on Friday night. Either because you want to bury it. Well, why do you want to bury information about the king? You don't. Or you have to beat what's coming out in the next news cycle. They had to beat what Sophie was going to say. Just like when they released the information about the king's health in May, They did it in May. They did it on a Friday night because Harry was releasing the Monday morning that he was going to the UK. And the king needed to say, oh, sorry, see, I'm back to work. My schedule's full. They had to keep that, they had to put that news out there before Harry made the announcement that he was coming so that it didn't look like they were just avoiding him. They used the same strategies and the same PR from 30 years ago. And that's fine because that makes them predictable. From what Dr. Sophie says and from what, else we can find out, it seems like the two princes that were in charge of Sentabali, they were pretty bad managers, to say the least. I mean, there could be more. We'll get to that later. That's for another day. That's a video for another day. And I'm not saying the king is involved in all this. What I'm saying is, just like that comment that I made, when do we stop tiptoeing around the fact that the king knew? That the king needs to act, that the king needs to do something. And that's what they're avoiding. That's what the king is realizing himself, I think. He's even realizing, my gosh, this is getting so out of control. I can't keep going with plausible deniability. There's no deniability. He had to know what was going on in Sentabali because some of it was set up before Harry took over. And who would have set it up? It would have been the king. It would have been the advisors. It would have been the palace. I don't know if it's the king exactly. But at this point, the king can't keep saying nothing. It's no longer never complain, never explain. He has to do something. I'm not saying he has to explain, what Harry's doing. No, he actually has to condemn him. That's what it is, that this convenient illness, that he can't be stressed, and we want to make him healthy for this trip to Italy. That's all because the king doesn't want to have to do anything yet. He wants to take his time. He wants to think about it. He wants to try and avoid saying something about Harry and condemning Harry, but he can't. And that was the missing piece that I believe clicked together for me. But I'm anxious to hear what you think. Do you think I'm on the right track here? Again, I'm not saying the king is involved in the corruption. I'm saying he's involved in not taking Harry to task for it. That's the issue. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a great day filled with love, laughter, and of course, dancing.
Dancing